You know about
Yeah.
the old Joe Jack.
Well, well, did you know that Randy Jackson is his brother?
No,
Wow.
I'm not. Oh, wait. That's because we haven't transitioned over yet. Do you not even pay attention, even? We're coming in, though. It's 8 o'clock. Except Noah's not here for some reason.
What did you do?
I don't know. Hold on. Let me move over. There you are.
I can hear by. I cannot see you.
I got it. I fixed it. Noah's here.
You gotta close the banner again. You left the banner open. Oh, there. Okay.
I
Yeah.
handled it.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay.
worry. I got it.
Well, it was a little
I
bit
handled
delayed.
it.
Hey, handle this.
Handle what?
I don't, there was no follow up there. There was no follow up.
Well, should have came stronger than that.
So, you're the resident uh MJ expert, and I don't mean Michael Jordan, because that would be me. Because
Oh,
I've seen Space Jam.
you're a big MJ fan?
Well, yeah, I watched the movie Space Jam. That's like his whole life.
Nice. What's up, Ghosted? What's up, Johnny? How y'all doing today? Welcome to Spoiled for Choice. If you keep up on our social
Good evening.
medias,
Good evening.
you'll know today's episode is
That was a
about.
comment that somebody said, and I'd like to reply to that comment. Good evening, Johnny.
Yes. Glad we got that out of the way. If you keep up with us, you know we postponed yesterday because the topic of the day is Michael
Well,
Jackson.
let's. Well, hold on. Now, hold on. Tim wanted to go ahead. Tim said MJ on V Day, and I said, well, yeah, okay, we could do that. And then he thought about it for a second. He let it marinate. He let his words marinate, and then he said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, oh, well, that was a short conversation.
That's exactly how it went down. But either way, we didn't want to discuss MJ on V Day, but we want to start doing like deep dives on the psychology of like popular people throughout history, pop culture, what have you, at least once a month next to our Apocalypse series. So today is MJ. I don't know if you guys in the audience are Michael
It's
Jackson
not Mary
fans.
Jane. It's not Mary Jane,
Yeah, no,
like the
not
one from
marijuana.
Spider-Man. It's not marijuana either.
I'm glad my brother enjoys the idea of Michael Jackson. If you are a fan of Michael
It's not the
Jackson,
peanut. It's not the peanut butter candy either. There's a peanut butter candy called Mary Jane's. It's not those either.
I'm giving you a moment. I'm gonna let you have a moment.
Okay.
Go ahead, riff it.
So, um, so what do you know about Michael Jackson?
Uh, Fair amount. I like a lot of his music. I know a lot about
Name one song. Name one song.
Black or White, We Are the World, the classics like Billie Jean, Smooth Criminal.
Were you trying to name like just random songs by him so that I would think you're like a real fan or something?
Rock with You. I still love Rock with You. I think that song's beautiful.
Well, yeah, because it's a beautiful song.
And then everyone knows Thriller. I mean, Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's
He wrote
yeah,
that.
yeah. The Way You Make Me Feel is a good one. I mean, he's just a legend, dude. Like, regardless of how you look at his history, man, and the Mirror is a good one too. Good job, John. Regardless how you
John's
look
just
at his
doing full
history.
discography. He copying and pasting it from Wikipedia.
Oh, dang, you're cheating, bro. But he's an icon, man. Like, regardless of what you think about his history, if you believe or disbelieve, however, whatever, um, the dude's an icon. Like, he's a musical genius. A musical genius. Now, on a personal level, he is a very interesting person. I don't know if he is legendary in terms of personality, but as a musical
I think.
artist,
I mean, well, he stands out in terms of personality at least.
memorable, yes. Legendary, I don't know. I don't know if he.
Most people, A, don't name their child blanket, and then B, don't hang their blanket over a balcony.
So I'm under the assumption, and I'll stay under the assumption that if you understand that we're doing a psychological deep dive, and you understand that the topic is Michael Jackson, then you understand. Oh, hey, not the blue guy. That's definitely my boy Solly for sure. But if you know about Michael Jackson and you know that this is a psychological deep dive, then you
He's not the
understand.
blue guy on my screen. He's red.
Well, he's green on mine. Uh,
Still not blue. He's still right.
so there was there were some cases brought up against Michael Jackson. But before we get into the cases and Macaulay Culkin and all the more intricate
Whoa, who's that?
what?
Who's that? You just mentioned a random person.
Not the blue guy. That's my boy Sully, and then John, and then Ghosted.
Okay, no, I'm not talking. I'm not talking with them. They're fine.
Oh, who are you talking about?
You just said we're going to talk about Michael Jackson, and you just randomly said Macaulay Culkin. What does that have to do with
Like I
anything?
said, we're gonna get into that later. If you paid attention,
Oh,
you would know.
well, I mean, fine. Joseph Jackson. Anyways, we're going to get into that later.
So tell me what you know of the history of Michael Jackson, like the grass
As far
grown
as I can
roots.
remember, as far as I can remember, I believe on August 29th of 1958,
He's on
Michael
Wikipedia
Joseph
for sure.
Jackson was no, this isn't Wikipedia. I can give you that much. Was born to Catherine and Joe Jackson in Gary, Indiana. There's a place called Gary, Indiana. That's somehow more fascinating than that Joseph Jackson was born to Joe Jackson.
It's just a lot of alliteration at this point, really.
Yeah. So his older siblings are Rebby, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Latoya, and Marlon. Later on, Randy and Janet join the family. Catherine Jackson raises her children as Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, what do you
So
find
that's
interesting
the
about
first
him and his
step in his
siblings,
life.
right?
Well, it is weird that they always group those first five together. But I mean, you know, well, yes, Johnny, that is him and his siblings were in the Jackson Five. That's what I was insinuating. Um, well, Johnny, I'm so glad he's yellow on yours. He is still not the blue guy. He's really working up to that title.
I mean, he earned it.
Um,
So, if I may, what a lot of people don't know. Oh, hold on, I'll take it from the MC own words. The whole they slept in the same room thing. He said that they did, but his room was huge, so it's basically the size of my house. There were other beds and all. Yeah, that's true. His master bedroom in his mansion was ridiculously large. But I want to kick it back real quick because we're in the childhood phases right now. What a lot of people don't know unless you've watched like documentaries or docuseries about Michael Jackson. What they don't talk about a lot about Michael Jackson, because he tried to brush it over later in life.
his middle name is Joseph.
Michael Jackson's father was basically a tyrant towards his children in terms of performance. Now, we need to dig in.
Wait a second, Johnny. So the father was in charge of a lot of their bookings and wrote some songs. Joe Jackson was in charge of most of those things, but fun fact, he was not originally in charge of a lot of that. Originally, he didn't even want them to play music.
It's because they did like a talent show or something for the church, and he saw the talent
Yeah,
and he got the
it
lust
goes
for
back
it.
to their mom trying to raise them, and I'm not going to say that Joe Jackson was a bad man or anything like that, but
Rude
he
boy.
didn't want them to be. He didn't want them to live like a no not like he was like a no nonsense kind of guy. He didn't want them to
So
live based on
so freshly
arts and things like that.
freshly coming off watching like multiple Michael Jackson documentaries, they all say the same thing about this part of the story. There's no deviations on this part of the story. It's very consistent.
Okay, well tell me.
So he got a taste
Tell
of
me.
their talent
There's no deviation.
for like a talent show at the church, and he saw how much potential they had as a group. So what was revealed not only by Michael Jackson himself, but by the mother and by the kids, is the father became like a pseudo manager. He did all the booking, and he what he said to them, how he explained it to them, was, we are an African American family in America. We have little to no chance to succeed beyond our living state right now. We don't have the money to send you to college. We don't have the money to make you something bigger than what you are. You're going to do this. You're going to perform, and you're going to be perfect down to the very last half note. You're going to be perfect because I won't accept anything less, and it's for you. And that sounds like a parent who wants nothing but the best for their kids, but his means of doing that was making them practice consistent, like straight practice for like 8 hours to 10 hours a day.
It's a big difference
Yeah.
between being a parent that's encouraging your child to learn the guitar and then treating your whole group of children as if they were like a car or something like that. and you hear one thing mess up, and you just take the whole thing apart and put it back together, and then
Yeah.
make it
Uh,
all try again.
he would
It's
beat them.
it was very
He would beat them in front of one
well,
another.
yeah.
It's kind of like those memes you see on the internet now, where like they're in front of their dogs and like they have a little mitt with like a face on it, and they like bite a hand with the mitt, and they just beat the crap out of the mitt, and then that's how they like train their dog not to bite through physical abuse. And that's what the dad did. The dad made examples of each one of the children. Every time they missed a note, every time they were off key, fell out of time, he would beat them with a belt in front of the others, including Michael Jackson. And that's a very strong starting point, because that's, you know, I mean, I don't care how soft or hard you want to look at the situation. That's traumatic.
So, and then what's really, I mean, interesting is that he was initially basically against this, and I mean, fear and uh, threat and all this are very strong motivators. Within 6 years, they signed their first record with
Motown, right?
Motown.
Yeah, Motown.
Yeah, and that was in 1968.
Keep in perspective, this is the Jackson 5. This is the initial power group of all the kids with the father as the manager. Um, the ABC song, all that stuff. Like they blew up, like, for sure. They were a very pop funk African American family. Every single one of them is incredibly talented. But what was interesting is that their TV presence and their in person presence were completely immaculate. They were perfect gentlemen. They were perfect performers. Everything about them felt transparent, but it was all scripted, because they became who they had to be successful, or successful in the industry at the time. Now we're dealing with teenagers and like kids, like kids, like
Well, and whenever they first started the band, he was only he was like 5 or 6. Like, it's
yeah,
not like we're talking about adults at all.
yeah. It's like my niece Lily. Like if they took Lily and made her get in the living room every single
That's a
day
very
for 6 to 8 hours a day and sing songs that she doesn't hear it on the radio, and she's never heard it on a record or out in public, so she can't familiarize herself with, like, oh, I've heard this before, I know how it's supposed to sound, I know this and the next. We're writing it, and I have to perfect it through my own process. Like, we write it, we perfect it. So if it's off, it's because I'm actively writing it. It's not like she's singing, you know, like a Katy Perry song or something where she's recollecting the notes, therefore she could sing the notes. And that is
yeah.
ridiculously.
They're no longer using like the hymnals from their church. Like, when they were doing the Jehovah's Witness stuff, they had resource material, they had prior knowledge, and now they're completely dropping most of that.
And they killed it, right? Like, so before we move into the Jackson 5 chapter, I just want to dissect that. And if you're in the chat and you want to add some things, that's totally fine. But I want you to put in perspective how scarring it would be to be in a musical group that early. All your music's custom, all of it's handmade. It's not derivative because it can't be derivative. And you have to be a perfect performer, and you're beat if you're not. Like, that is so psychologically scarring, but as a child you don't understand that it's
Also, keep in
psychologically
mind, yeah, there was you got to keep in mind for Michael Jackson specifically, since he was like the youngest one. He hasn't even been through puberty yet. He doesn't have like a driver's permit or anything like that. He's barely even started school. He's only in second or third grade, if he even went to school, which I don't remember if he did or not.
So I say all this to say, pretty much before we move into the Jackson 5 saga, there's the hand of God theory at play, right? There's fear of the father, there's fear of this hierarchy that he has to live in, because he's the lead vocalist. So he has to like be the dude in the front, but he's got all these people to listen to and all these expectations. And as a child, like, that's why they say don't make your child a child star. Like, it's scarring because there's all these expectations, and now he can't even
So
escape it at home.
not only is it bad because you're making your child a child star, but because you are actively doing that, you are not being their parent, you're being their teacher or their manager, and that's what we see with Joe Jackson. We don't see a father, we see a very strict manager.
Yeah, a
Because
manager
he
who.
is very strict and controlling, but he's not a very strict and controlling father. He's a very strict and controlling manager.
Yeah, you
And
have
I
a.
feel like, again, not to make him seem like a bad guy or whatever, which, I mean, you make your opinion for yourself, but that's the front he put up. That's the front that he put up in front of those children, was that I'm managing you and you are going to do perfect.
Yeah.
He didn't bring up the front that we're a family or anything like that. That you guys are a unit. That we have to be a family because, I mean, that's just how it is.
So I mean, we're not talking about Joe Jackson, so I don't want to harp on him, but I do want to speak to his point, right? Like, this is this is early this is early Motown. This is like, it wasn't against the law to beat your kids. Like, that's just the thing you do. You beat your kids if they don't do what you want. And then he's got that fear of, oh crap, I'm in an all African American family. I have no advantages in society. If I don't, now that I've seen there is potential here, if I don't completely capitalize on it to the upteenth degree, this is going to go unnoticed and we're just going to stay in this position. Like, this is all we'll be. But now I have an idea that we could be more. So he just chased that idea. So, I mean, while it was still a D-bag thing to do, I can see in that decade why he would chase it so hard. Like, he got a bite of something sweet.
Well, we also kind of have to consider, again, like we said, it's not it's that his father was very strict and controlling, so it's likely that he told them when they did good, but he might have just directly told them. And so anytime they perform, however, everyone in the crowd or in the stage or in the auditorium, wherever they were at, is going to cheer for them, and that could have been their only sense of positive reinforcement.
Yeah,
And so
it's
they'd much rather, endure that negative, all that negative, so that they can get that positive, because the only positive that they know they can get.
yeah. I mean, like John just said in the chat, he thought the ends justified the means, and he did. And in a way, I mean, we could deep dive that part of it all day because he did believe that the ends justified the means. And if you look at it in perspective, depending on how you want to look at it, right? Because his whole goal was, I refuse to be just another African American family in the system, completely disadvantaged, completely disenfranchised. I refuse to be in this position. He got that. So if that's your goal, the ends did justify the means. But
Yeah,
then you're
and
taking out what was the cost of it.
yeah, and so another thing you have to consider is you think of any person. I mean, even like the Kardashians or anybody like that. Name one person that started out at Joe Jackson's level, and he got not just one, but all five, and even the later two of his children to be almost completely famous.
All
Like, you
superstars.
might not know, yeah, you might not know all the members of the Jackson Five. Three of them, everybody knows. The rest of them, you at least know what they look like, or you've seen them before. Like, everyone was famous.
Yeah, you've heard their songs. Like, you'll know it. You'll know it by the first few beats if you're musically inclined. So with that, let's
And
jump.
that's,
Let's
you know,
jump into the Jackson
that's
Five.
within 10 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so,
yeah,
and
that's like decades ago.
it's crazy to think that that was all within 10 years. They were all famous. Like, so if we look at it, in the year 1969, 1 year after Motel signs them, they have the number one single spot, I Want You Back.
Sully says,
And
"I know
so,
Janet for sure." I mean,
easy,
I can't blame
easy, easy, Sully.
you. Easy, easy. 2004. Nice. All right, so let's take what you've put on the plate here, which is Mike's the youngest. He's literally a child, and now he's in a super group. They've signed him Motown. They're literally doing gigs. They're making money, right?
Yeah,
So
and they're making good money, too, even for being like African American or whatever you want to argue
yeah,
at the time.
I mean they're
I
still
mean,
getting undercut in terms of like comparing
yeah,
to white artists. Like they're still getting undercut, but they're making money that they've never seen before, undoubtedly. Like
yeah, and
that's
in
not even
terms
an
of being
argument.
signed to Motown of all people, I mean, they were making more than Joe Jackson and Catherine
For sure,
probably could have made on their own
for
in their
sure.
whole lifetime in just like a couple months.
So we're trying to dig into the psychology of Michael Jackson here. So let's talk about we've already talked about the pressure of being in a famous group. We've talked about the pressure of your parent being your manager, but also being a bit abusive. Now let's talk about the effects of the Jackson 5, because there's something that gets overlooked in the Jackson 5, but when Michael Jackson talks about it and Michael Jackson's brothers talk about it, they always bring this up, which lets me know there's more to this story than what we've been told. Otherwise, everyone wouldn't remember it the same way, and everyone wouldn't always. There's not a documentary with the brothers in it that you don't hear this story. In the
It's
Jackson
kind of
5.
like well, it's kind of like the alien theory. Like, if so many people are describing it the exact same way, it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying. Like, there's some grain of truth to it.
Yeah, you're setting the foundation that you can't crack the foundation because it's so solid due to sheer numbers. And this story is the same exact way. So at this point, Michael Jackson's a preteen. Like, his voice hasn't dropped, so everybody was super paranoid about MJ's voice dropping. Once he hits puberty, his career is over. We've got to go platinum. We've got to go gold. We got to go double platinum. We got to do this before he hits puberty and his voice drops. So they're touring. School is in touring. Family vacations in touring. Churches in touring. Everything is in touring. You have teenage boys, older teenage boys on tour, famous musicians. What is doomed to come being a famous musician is the introduction to sex and that lifestyle. Sex, alcohol, and the things that make the music industry rotate. The story I'm talking about is Michael Jackson is a young boy, and they all slept in the same hotel because their parents were very fickle with money. Like, sometimes they'd be exuberant, but most of the time in terms of travel, they kept it cheap because why not? They lived in a small house. They're used to sleeping in the same room, etc.
Again, like you were saying earlier, they thought that the magic would end. Like, they were always scared the magic would end, and therefore we have to live cheaply because we want this to last the rest of our lives. If this is the most money we've ever had, we can make this last a while.
Yeah, there's no point in living above your means if your means aren't consistent.
Yeah, and that it's so. I mean, I don't want to give the depiction that they're staying at some kind of low quality hotel just to be mean or just to be cheap or something like that. I mean, there's some logic behind it.
Yeah, and I mean that's how it was. It was all the boys in one room, and then I think the parents were in another room, and the older boys would obviously attract women, and obviously bring those women back to the hotel room and sleep with them. Now the issue is, in all these stories, the brothers always admit they knew Michael was awake, and the women would always ask, "Oh, is that your little brother Michael? Oh, his voice, like, is that Michael? Is he asleep? Can I talk to?" Michael was always brought up. He was awake because he goes on the record on multiple of these documentaries saying, "Oh, I heard everything, like from the conversation beforehand to the act itself. I was there for it all." So now you have
logically, it's crazy to think that a child, at his age, especially like 10 to 13, would be asleep with all that kind of noise going on. Like, sure, maybe a 5-year-old or something like that, like really young, they might not remember,
yeah
but he's not at that age. Like, it just doesn't match up very well.
yeah
With,
it's unreasonable to think
memory
that this isn't
psychology.
gonna take. So he's what I bring this story up not to just talk about sex or whatever. I bring this story up because it's important information. He was introduced to sex as a child, like, and I know in today's society that's whatever, you could get that on TikTok, but this is back in the day. Sex is something between married people, what have you, or it was always done
Yeah,
and talked about behind closed doors, and this dude is not only hearing about it, he's experiencing it firsthand from his brothers in the same room continuously.
and well, that's another big thing that we can dive into is today, like you said, TikTok and other things like that. You can see explicit things even when you are really young, and that does have effects on the cognitive mind,
Yeah.
and especially in this generation. And it's also a lot different because he doesn't. There's no phones. It's not like he's looking up just random things. This is his family that's engaging in these activities, so it's not just damaging in the fact that he's exposed to some process that his mind and body doesn't really need right now at this point in his life. So his psychosexual development is being completely reversed and flipped around from all of this, but also his family relations are being changed by this because I mean, he sees all his brothers and other family members engaging in these kind of activities, and I
There's no
mean,
boundary.
that's yeah, it's right there in front of him, and he has to try to piece together what does this mean for them, and then what does this mean for me because I'm here too.
So, so with all this in mind, I want to pull this all together and culminate it into something that's going to make a lot of sense if you haven't thought about it in this way before. He has been introduced and pretty much indoctrinated into adult themes from like the age of 5.
Hmm.
Be it sex, business, performance, public speaking, things that children have no business being anywhere near. Like to study and survey, that's one thing, but to actively participate in these things at such a young age is not good for your mind because it is taking away from what makes being a child a child. You've lost that sense of innocence. There are thousands of eyes on you all the time. Nothing you do is private. If you have an imaginary friend, your parents are like, "Oh, cute, Mike's got an imaginary friend," but the public's like, "Oh, Mike's schizophrenic, so can't let Mike have an imaginary friend." Like, you've lost the
Yeah,
ability to be a kid, for sure, a hundred
yeah,
thousand
you're
percent.
you're easily under a microscope for all of this, and so the things that people don't see are completely swept under the rug, and that's like him being in the same room as all his brothers while all this illicit activities going on. They're not letting that get out. But you know, if he wanted to play baseball or something like that, millions of people would show up because it's Michael Jackson,
Exactly.
and so that means that his family can't allow something like that because they don't want to make a big public scene, and so he basically has is forced to swap out his childhood for a 9 to 5 job, and you know it's kind of unreasonable for a child to have to do that, but it is something that happens. You know, every generation there's 2 or 3 people that are told you're not going to be a child, you're going to be a worker, you're going to go straight into the service industry.
Yeah, you have to be an adult, and that's not good for anyone. Because part of being a child, part of emotional development, if we're gonna dig into this foolproof, part of emotional development is being able to scream and throw a fit and get mad over ridiculous things and just be ridiculous and outlandish because that's what
Well,
kids
we
do. That's
learn yeah, we learn different things from this. We don't, simply just scream to scream. And so, but I mean, sometimes we do scream to see what kind of reaction that gets, and that's how we learn social negotiation. And I feel like that's something that, of course, Michael Jackson was never exposed to was social negotiation. And he doesn't barter for things because his dad tells him what he gets. His brothers tell him what he's going to do. So there's no social negotiation on his part other than what he can do to make a song. And I feel like that's very important for the rest of his life because we see that on the news, we see that in the media, and we see that with any interview that he's in.
it's just very interesting to me because right away with what we've built, I mean, he's not even a teen yet, like at least mid-teens, and we've got a lot of below surface level damage taking place in multiple different areas all simultaneously. But the thing is, if you're touring and you're handling business contracts, this, that, and the next, you don't have the time. Even as a kid, you don't have the time to unpack that. You're too busy. You're busy with setting up for the show tomorrow. You're busy with planning the next commercial. You don't have time to understand or think about, oh, I'm not getting to like go play softball with my buddies. I'm not having time to play with my Power Rangers. I just need to figure out how I'm going to get to Boston in time for my 2 o'clock show. Now think about that. Think about that one sentence. How can you do that and be a 6-year-old kid, a 10-year-old kid, a 13-year-old kid? None of those numbers make sense with what I just said. That's ridiculous to think about. But they're too famous now. Like from the very first single, they are too famous to care about rationality. And that's what happened. And that that's what makes this an example, right? You get so caught up and the parents are raking it in, which is not the parents' fault. I mean, you know, the development of parenting. First of all, every parent's a different case, but the development of parenting healthily wasn't even a thing. You just pop out a kid, do what you can. Give it your best.
Yeah, this was much before the books on, developmental psychology, parenting 101. All of those things you learned socially. So you would ask your mom or your aunt, or you would ask your dad or your great grandmother, just whoever's around. You'd be like, oh, well, how did you raise your kids? Because clearly they survived. Clearly, they're working class people, and that's all they look for. You survive, you can perform a job, you can maintain wage.
Yeah. You do
And
what
I
you need to
mean,
do.
in the yeah, and I mean, in the end, it's not necessarily that that's wrong. It's not wrong to want a child to survive, to have a job, and to be successful. And so we don't see a need to use those kind of books at that time,
I
right?
mean, yeah, back then the bare minimum was the maximum, right? You raise your kid, you make sure he's not a serial killer, you make sure he can hold down a job. Today, in today's
Yeah,
standards, that's the bare minimum. Like that's rule number 1. You
yeah,
still have 50 more
and
rules.
and again, there's no cameras looking after people. There's no, I mean, there's almost no media in which people's minute to minute can be recorded. I
For
mean,
sure.
there'd be days and months that go by of your life. I mean, there's nothing to prove that that time ever even happened.
So,
But today, you've got proof of messages, proof of phone calls, you've got proof of like internet usage and all that. Like, there's so many things that are checking what exactly you do and to make sure that you actually follow these certain guidelines. And it's important to note, I mean, those things just didn't exist.
exactly. And with that, now we're jumping into the later teen years of Michael Jackson, right? Because he's doing this for years, which means this is going.
Which is also crazy. I mean, don't think it gets any better, because like we were saying earlier, like you'd think that Michael Jackson hits puberty and then the magic dies, right? I mean, that's what everybody was thinking.
Yeah, his voice would drop and the career would be over. They wouldn't be the Jackson 5 anymore. Which is true, but a landslide from reality, right? He's a late teenager now. He's pretty much an
So,
adult given the time.
so right before, let's peel back just an inch. So it's important to know that in 1972 he does record singles as a solo artist,
Yeah, that's what I was
because
about to get
he
into.
records the yeah yeah well, this isn't whenever he was 15 or anything.
Oh,
This was whenever he was 13. Like, this is still when he was super young. He records three solo uh three singles solo, and he even does a song for a horror movie called Ben. And
yep.
so he's doing all of this by himself with his dad managing him. And I mean, we kind of lose track of what happens with all the other members of the Jackson 5 at this point. Like, we only see the Jackson 5 for a couple of years.
Yeah. And I want to build on that because that was actually a pretty substantial moment in Michael Jackson's career. Uh, I believe it was an argument between the Jackson 5 about like creative differences and what have you for the next album. Music's constantly shifting around this time, so they need to shift with it or fall under the wave. So an
Hmm.
argument breaks out about what to do next. New dances, new sounds, this, that, and the next thing. A fight breaks out. Mike's like, "Well, I'm out. Like I can do this on my own. I don't need y'all." And he leaves, and he gets met by another producer, and the producer's like, "Hey, man, don't stop doing music. Like, you're literally an icon. You need to keep doing music. Introduce solo music. Granted, everything he does is pretty much all held up by his father because his father, there's no other thought. Like there is no, I can have another manager. Like I can have another production team. No, the father is the only thing in sight. So the father is the only option. So he starts
Hmm.
doing solo stuff, and this is going to become uh, a big block in what separates him from the Jackson 5 because now he's getting a taste of independence. And in one of the major documentaries I saw, this producer met him crying outside of a production room, and the producer went on record to say, when I met this kid, he was very articulate. He knew exactly what to say, but what he was saying wasn't what he was feeling. He was saying things from a script. So I broke that mold and I made him talk to me as a person, and he didn't know how to be a person. Like everything he said was conflicting to everything he portrayed. Like, he didn't understand social cues. He had never kissed a woman or been on a date. Like, he didn't understand what it meant to be an individual. And this dude was like, "Hey, Mike, let
He
me
was
take."
13. That's why he's never been on a date. He's only 13.
Well, yeah, but he's a rock star, right? So, like, he's surrounded by sex and everything. He should at least be on a date or, you know, been kissed by a girl, whatever. Or at least that's what the producer said. So the producer was like, let me introduce you, like, to the world. And this is where the seed of independence gets sown into Michael Jackson. And he's like, uh-oh, maybe I can do what I actually want to do and separate from my father and separate from the Jackson 5. Which is why after he started doing solos, very shortly after, the Jackson 5 disbanded, because Mike was like, hey, so I know what it means to be a human now. I'm a perfect adult. People tell me I'm awesome, and therefore I have the credentials to say bye. So, like, you know, bye. And
Yeah, and
go ahead.
so to go back just an inch, I mean, another reason that he wanted this independence is or I mean, he didn't really want it per se. He didn't know to want it. It's mostly that it just got introduced to him in some way, because again, like we were saying earlier, that Joe Jackson managed Michael Jackson. He didn't manage, you know, just this and that. Like, he planned for what kind of conversations Michael Jackson would have.
Exactly. It was the PR
And
team.
so that was the main reason that they wanted to. That's the main reason that this producer wanted to figure out what was really going on with Michael Jackson, was because he is genuinely making some of these songs. Like, some of these songs are his inspiration. So what is it that's causing him to make these songs, even though he's acting this way publicly?
Yeah, John is in the chat. He says in the 70s they changed their name to the Jacksons and left Motown and signed to Epic Records, right? I'm glad you brought that up, because that falls in line with what we're talking about right now. So once Mike started going a little independent, he started arguing a little bit better. It wasn't just, hey, big bro, little bro, whatever, what have you. You know, I'm the lead singer and I kind of make the headlines. I want to do this kind of music. And obviously they say, shut up, give him a wedgie, whatever. And that's when he started doing solo stuff. He comes back and now he's in his bag, right? He's all gassed up.
Well, so it's worth noting that again, he does "Got to Be There," "Rockin' Robin," "I Want to Be There," "I Want to Be Where You Are," and all these other singles in 1972. The Jacksons didn't sign to Epic Records until 1975, so this is
Yep.
when he was 15.
Yeah, he does these singles and he realizes people don't.
Yeah, he's already got the money behind him. He's already
Yeah.
got the backing to show that he's more successful than they are.
Yeah, he's finally found his own wings, and he's like, oh well, people love me, like they love us, but the same amount, if not even more, love me. So he goes back, all gassed up in his bag, and he's like, yo, this is what we're doing, or I'm out. And they agreed to change the name. They agreed to pretty much make him like the lead of the direction of, you know, the Jacksons, now not the Jackson 5, the Jacksons. And he's like, I don't like Motown anymore because I want to move into more like soul R&B. So that's what we're going to do. And this caused a lot of contention between the members of the family, not the members of the band, but the members of the family, because now you have sibling rivalry at play. Everybody's like, oh, well, like Mike's like more important. So like, why am I even here? So them move it. Yeah, they did get stiffed on a lot of cash. So they moved to Epic so that they could, you know, be more flexible with their genre. But this, to me, from what I've watched, this transition from Motown to Epic was the straw. Like, this was the thing that was like, okay, we need to do this because financially it's a smarter decision. But the fact that Mike is the one doing all the barking and we just kind of have to do it, I don't like that. Like, that's taking my independence in this group away from me. I'm just following Mike. And you know, that's one of the things where like it became an argument again because you know when you work with family that tends to happen. And Mike was just
Well,
like,
so
"I'm outie, dude."
and so I mean they clearly try to do something together as a family again. But what's just super strange to me is now, uh, in around the time he turns 20, which is right after, 1975, they try to get it all back together with the Jacksons. What's crazy is what happens in 1978. Do you remember what happened in 1978?
He's still a teenager.
No, he's 20. He's 20 at this point.
Oh,
He's just turned. He's like 19, 20,
is this
somewhere
the
in there.
Pepsi commercial?
No,
No, that's later on. That's
this is when he gets his own his own role in in a hit movie. He
that's
film
right.
debuts in The Wiz as the Scarecrow.
Oh my gosh, I remember his parents hated his mom. Even in a modern day documentary, his mom was still ticked off about that because she thought it was evil. She's like, I told him explicitly not to do that movie because it's against God, and he did it because his new producer friend, the one that showed him women and showed him alcohol and how he could be a real human being, was like, if you want to
I
act,
don't think
man, like
that's
if
the definition of a real human being, but continue.
yeah, well, yeah, he was like, yo, like if you have a passion for this, people love you. Like you don't have to worry about the success of this movie. You don't have to worry about the script. You don't have to worry about anything. Michael Jackson's on the payroll. Your name alone will fill seats.
Yeah,
And
I mean, and that's the main reason they wanted him was The Wizard of Oz is a musical. They wanted it to be a more urban retelling with some African American representation, and so I mean they can't not use him. Like he's literally the icon of the past few
he
years
is.
in terms of African American history as entertainers. And so if they overlook him, then they've overlooked a significant portion. I mean, it's going to be clear. Well, they couldn't get Michael Jackson for this.
Yep. And I believe it was him doing Oz that put him on the media because I don't know if you guys watching this know this, but Michael Jackson wasn't just a musician. This dude loved movies, media, like being a director, being a writer, being a producer. He was all over the roster. And that's
Well,
something a lot of people don't know about Michael Jackson.
and it goes back to that initial thing. We talked about this earlier that he didn't get much positive reinforcement at home, more than likely. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that his mother gave him some positive reinforcement, but it's likely that most of the reinforcement was negative reinforcement from his father.
Yeah,
And so if he okay, what?
oh, I
Huh?
mean, I'm just
Huh?
saying we're building a contrasting like complex here because he
Yep.
craves
And so
attention. Like he wants love and he's getting love from his fans. But there's also a huge sense of vanity because Michael Jackson, I don't care what you say. I mean, you can look at his discography, you can look at whatever. But vanity plays a huge part in this because to him his public presence is key in why people love him. People love him because he's this Michael Jackson. He has to be beautiful. He has to be
but
perfect.
also, I mean, that's the thing is that's what his dad instilled in him was that he has to be perfect in every way for people to still like him, and that is the only thing that he's looking for is for people to like him.
I didn't know he tried to buy Marvel. That's crazy.
Yeah, whenever we reach not the golden age of Marvel Comics, but there's a silver age and then a bronze age, and so there's this downhill slope, and Marvel is burning quick, and Michael Jackson, he's one of the youngest, richest people in Hollywood at the time, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I love comic books. I mean, I'm still basically a child inside, so yeah, I want to do it so that I can make my own movies or I can play these certain parts in movies. And ultimately, Marvel decided they would try to figure something else out, but he did make the offer.
Well, looks like that worked out in the end. 57
What
films later,
you
all
don't
breaking the
you
box
don't
office.
you don't know that they would have been worse with Michael Jackson as one of the lead directors.
Nah, he's, I mean, objectively a creative genius, you know?
But we could have had some more Marvel musicals. That would have been cool, right?
No.
No, not even a little bit. Um, But it's also worth noting that because he does this whole movie, The Wizard of Oz, in 1978, he also has a lot of inspiration because he's writing all these songs, and he did collaborate and write most of the songs for The Wizard of Oz. And so the next year, what happens, Tim?
You tell me, buddy boy.
He releases his first complete album.
Oh yeah, what the first album is? That's not Off the Wall, is it?
It is Off the Wall, and
Off the
it's
Wall.
Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You are both #1 hits on that album.
Yeah, no, he came out swinging, bro. His first album was a pop off for sure. But I mean, he already had so much hype behind him, man. Movie, music, commercials, like
Why did John say no? No, 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 no.
talking
No,
about the
no, no, no,
musical
no.
thing. He's definitely talking about the musical thing for sure, dude.
All night, all night. So he doesn't. He doesn't. So he wants to watch. He wants to watch Marvel musicals all night. That's what I'm piecing together.
All night. Yeah, man. So he dropped Off the Wall, which I mean, okay, so it makes it seem like Off the Wall is not a record when I say it sold good because he already had hype. I am not saying that. Off the Wall, if you listen to Michael Jackson, I've had my Michael Jackson phases. I still love a lot of Michael Jackson's music. Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. Now, hold on to your belt loops, okay? Off the
I'm
Wall
not wearing it, but okay.
is one of the very few, and there I do mean very few, perfect albums. Off the Wall is a perfect album, which is terrifying to me because the first album an artist ever creates is not supposed to be a perfect album. So he's already a musical anomaly to me, strictly because he came in clutch, album #1. Now I know there's things at his advantage. He's already got musical experience. He's already been a #1 charter. You know, he's great. He's just inarguably great. But to be solo in a diverse musical sphere where things are constantly changing, like music in the 70s were the Wild West because people could love you one day and hate you the next. For him to drop Off the Wall, for it to hit, and for it to retain the way it hit, Off the Wall was a perfect album. Even by today's standards, Off the Wall, perfect album. Very few of those in the world.
And so to dial back, I mean, this is what he's doing as a professional, right? This album is what he does as a professional.
He's in his
right?
bag, dude. Built
So
different.
what you have to consider is that The Wiz isn't what he did as a professional. So what would you describe as why he did The Wiz?
Man, he's a kid, bro. Like, he's a 20-year-old child. Like, he loves
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah, and so
Go ahead.
okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, he does love magic. He likes the idea of being something else because he's never done a school play. He's never had the chance to be something other than what his dad told him to be. And that's why a lot of people state that, after they film the movie, it'd be hours and hours after they were done filming, he'd still be in full costume wearing the scarecrow makeup because, he's just trying to live in this moment because it's a moment where he's not Joe Jackson's Michael Jackson. He's the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And so that builds into something that occurs a few years later. After his perfect album, you'll never guess what
Thank you.
happens, Tim. What happens the year after? What happens the year after his perfect album?
That's Pepsi,
Bless you,
right?
I believe you sneezed. Oh my goodness, Tim! No, quit jumping the gun.
I don't remember when the
I mean,
Pepsi commercial happened,
Pepsi
man. I
thing
just know it
happens at some
changed.
point.
It ruined his brain.
So he gets, of course, the best R&B vocal performance at the Grammys in 1980 because Off the Wall, right?
Yeah, he bagged so many Grammys in his day.
Yeah, so that's when he gets his first one. And so then music videos, it's the 80s, music videos start, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think is the first thing he does?
He's making a movie, baby. Not just a music video. He's making a
Yeah, I mean,
film.
he's going straight back to the Wiz. He's going to try to relive the magic, and he does the Thriller music video where he literally becomes a werewolf. I mean, it's
Man.
again the magic, something that happens.
Like, you can't
And
do
then-
it. You can't do it smarter than the Thriller, man. Like, can I go on one about Thriller real quick? Can I just talk about
Go
why
ahead.
Thriller is perfect? Listen, look at the time period, bro. Movies, going to the cinema, like going to the theaters, that's all couples have, right? Like you're talking post-war, you're talking the world's trying to normalize. Theater is everything. People love movies. They love a presentation. TV's popping, movies are popping, everything is popping. The song itself, the song Thriller is literally perfect because it fits every single mold because dude, it's everything, right? The beat catchy, everything syncopates perfectly. The lyrics catchy. It's not too hip hop, it's not too rock, it's not too country, and it's not too R&B and soul. It's literally just a fun song in a decade, in a time period, in a country where people are craving to forget about their reality. They're craving it. Horror movies are popping off, just like John just said. People were itching for something darker. Like, dude, it's marketing genius. Like, from the theatrical aspect to it to the musical aspect of it, he's like a freaking savant. Like, really, like, genuinely, he's like a savant with marketing, at least in this facet. It's ridiculous how clever and strategic this drop was.
What you have to consider is that, I mean, even if he's not, some kind of savant with all these things, which I mean he very well could have been. I mean, everyone, no matter where you are, has some form of their former child inside them, and all Michael Jackson works with is what he understands, and so things like Thriller and Beat It, and all these other videos he's starting aren't necessarily complex. They're not really about something that is crazy or whatever. I mean, it's very simple, and it tells you exactly what he intends.
I
And
mean,
then on top of that,
man,
he's still a child inside, and then he releases a sick dance move that no one else can do. I mean, you
oh
can't
yeah,
you can't compete with that.
dude. One more thing, and I swear to God, I'll stop. So the Thriller
Okay.
dance, right?
I thought
If
you were
we,
gonna go to Pepsi. I thought
no, no, we're
you
not
just
jumping to
diving
Pepsi yet.
straight
We'll
for
get
it.
there. So if it wasn't enough that he made a perfect song and a perfect music video and dropped them literally at the perfect time in the perfect country in the perfect way, if it literally wasn't perfect enough, look at the way Michael Jackson dances. He dances in a way that unless you are a dancer, you can't dance like Michael Jackson. Noah, if you got up right now and stood as far back from your webcam as you can and danced, you would not touch Michael Jackson. Dude had moves, right? Like he was straight up 100% on a dance floor. But he created a dance with a Thriller that people could do. You could watch it a handful of times and you could do the Thriller dance. You're in the music video, dude. You're a Thriller. Are you kidding? Are you freaking kidding me? I just don't I don't know what.
Yeah, I could do that. I could probably do that.
You could do the Thriller, bro. Like, that's the point. I truly believe that was part of the marketing genius. I need something people can dance to, and the only way they're going to be able to dance to this is if I lead the charge. If I take point here and make it possible, boom, people got it. This song's popping because when it comes on in the club, when it comes on the radio, you can do the dance. I made the dance easy enough for you to do. Grandma Tammy can do it. You can do it. It's just smart, man. It's just smart. He was a media tactician, and I'll stand by that till I die. Like, there's not many minds like Michael Jackson. Get out of here. Get out of here.
So, so all this happens, and then the next year, he has all of this positive. Like this is probably the most positive energy he's ever had, right?
Yeah, no, everyone loves Michael Jackson.
So, so I mean, what happens now is there's controversy, because he develops this rare condition, and whether you believe it or not, his whether he has vitiligo or not is irrelevant because now his body changes. Whether he does it because someone convinces him it's a good idea, because he thinks it's a good idea, or because he genuinely has vitiligo, now all that positive reinforcement is shifting into something else entirely.
Yeah,
And
but
so, I mean, this was the talk of all of America in 1984 was, I mean, is he getting plastic surgery? I mean, what kind of technology do we have available that can cause him to look this way?
Sorry about that. Um,
Okay, you all right?
yeah, no,
Okay.
everything's cool. I just needed to make sure stuff was okay. Um,
And this
so
is when he builds his own house.
yeah, I mean, this is Neverland, but like what I'm into right now. So he
Yeah.
get what it's vertigo, right? It's where the skin starts to
Vitiligo.
yeah, and you start to develop patches of like you start to lose melanin or it moves into a different
It,
place and you get
yeah,
like
so
white patches.
it's literally your body kind of views melanin as a poison or a toxin or something like that, and it literally systematically goes through your body and destroys anything that contains melanin.
So the thing is, I've seen people with it. You kind of get splotchy, right? Like you get
Yeah.
patchy. Here's one thing that kind of this poised the downfall of Michael Jackson's public image, and I don't think he recognized it. I think he was trying to do something for himself because of the vanity, which was scarred into him. I don't think he is naturally vain. I think it was scarred into him. Vanity is part of me. Like I have to be this. I think what happened, or what I know happened, the poisoning for his downfall. So he got this pigment surgery and made his skin completely white because he didn't want this like blemish or whatever you want to call it. And then he told the public for the longest time
Hmm.
that it just happened. Like the nose, like oh, my nose has always been like this. Like the skin, I've always been like this. And because he lied,
Well, that's what's crazy is, you know, there's no there's no idea of what's the proper choice. He's not an adult. Again, there's so many things that didn't happen in his life, and so his skin color starts to disappear, and that genuinely could have started to happen. And rather than trying to get it tattooed or whatever to cover up, he has to try to figure something out. And this is where there's such a weird racial barrier
my dog is
that
freaking out. Hold
you
it
know
down. I'm gonna hop back in.
okay. So I mean, it's such a weird thing because he grew up in a time where if it's if it's black people versus white people, well, it seems like the white people are the better option. And I'm not, of course, saying that he would have preferred to be white or anything like that. But also, it's not to say that someone else or other people didn't tell him, maybe this is the better option. So it's just very confusing why, because of vitiligo, he didn't decide to get tattoos, or he didn't decide to do some other choice. I mean, obviously he was told he couldn't embrace. Yeah, it was obviously could he was told he couldn't embrace his vitiligo. He couldn't embrace the blotchy skin because that's not considered beautiful. And so, uh, you know, what does he have to consider is beauty at this point? Because his body is the thing that's going to be put into question. And so, I mean, you just have to consider that. You know, what's the next step? Where does Michael Jackson go from here? Because he's literally at the halfway point between being African American, what he grew up with all these problems, and then being Caucasian, which is what he sees as all these famous people,
Yeah.
which is just really confusing. I mean, it's confusing for me. I'm a grown adult, and for him in his state of mind, how did he feel in that scenario?
And then what I was saying earlier, right? So he tried to like shield this from the public, like these were just things that were gonna happen. But okay, you've got your hair done, you got your skin repigmented, you got your nose done. What is this? What's happening? And he lied. He lied about every one of it. So because we're like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decades ago, people aren't gonna dig beyond surface level, right? What's prominent in America in that day and age? Racism, supremacy, if you will. So what do people immediately jump to? Oh, he's betraying his race. He's ashamed of being an African American. He wants to be a white man. That's why. And
Which, I mean, it's super impressive that that would even be an option, and the sheer fact that somebody would even do something like that is crazy, especially in the 80s. Like, now there's so many different laser surgeries and things like this, but I still have no idea what kind of surgery they would even do for something like that.
I have no, and like, so let's, if you go back
People would
after
say
this,
like skin bleach. They would say all kinds of
yeah,
just
they
random things that just kind of make sense to
they tried to
without
say he like
medical
sat
background.
at his home and like sat in a vat of bleach or something. Like they built all these
Yeah.
theories, um, and like
And I mean, it's also possible he very well could have, because I mean, if basic attempts aside, like say he did want to try to get his skin just tattooed the same pigment or something like that. Like if we were to cross that off the table, I mean, where do we go from here? If I can't turn back African American, like if I can't turn my original pigment, maybe I do need to like soak in bleach or something. Maybe I need to make this happen quicker, so at least then the media's gone. At least then the scandal's over. All right, you've got a trivia question, Tim.
what's up?
Well, it's in the chat. It's in the chat.
Uh, okay, just for the people who watch this on YouTube, I'll read it out loud. Trivia: which Michael Jackson album was the first to ever go triple diamond? Okay, so let's take a moment and dig into what albums were his prime time albums, right? So,
Uh, First three albums we got
Off the Wall,
uh of course,
you got Thriller,
Off the Wall. We've got Bad, and we've got Thriller.
and Bad. Yeah, bad. So the first one to go triple, was it was it was it Thriller? I imagine it was Thriller.
I would think it was Thriller. Thriller. I know has a Guinness World Record for going platinum 20, what is it, 21, 27 times.
I mean,
I mean,
maybe
it was over 20 times, just why it gets world
it was
record.
Thriller. Sick. It was the all right for all you guys at home. It was Thriller. They're all bangers though. Like every single one of those albums are bangers. Off the Wall is still perfect start to finish, but they're all three
Can you
bangers.
imagine though? So this is, 1987. Or sorry, no, this is 1990. He's 32, and now he's in the Guinness Book of World Records at 32, with having an album that's gone platinum
So
21 times.
so I wanna approach something. He's friends with movie stars and other musicians, but he's also very he built Neverland, right? And he hides on Neverland. Like if you go through Michael
Yeah, of
Jackson's
course. I
history,
mean,
if you accumulate
social battery is very.
yeah, if you accumulate all the time Michael Jackson spent in the public talking to the press, whatever, it would look like he spent decades as a hermit later in life because he has the ability to make that decision now. He does a tour, goes and chills out for 5 years. He does a tour, he goes and chills for another 3 years. He has that. So the only people in his corner are people he chooses to be in his corner. What we know about Michael Jackson, due to the fact that he started lying to the public, which is one of the reasons he stopped talking to the public, he is incredible at
Yeah.
PR. He is horrible on the spot. He does not know how to defend himself verbally, and he always paints himself in a corner. That's why there's that big joke, especially on South Park, where like you can say anything, and Michael Jackson's just like, "Oh, that's ignorant. That's ignorant. That's lies from the press." That's all he could think to say. You're dealing with someone who's in a 30-year-old body, but their brain's like, it's not that progressed, man, because he hasn't had to handle that crap. Everything was put on a sheet of paper for him. When they ask you this, say this. When they ask you this, say this. He spent his whole adult life coming up with stuff on the fly. That's why if you watch Michael Jackson interviews, all his answers, every time he gets asked a question, he looks off put because he doesn't know what to say. He didn't think about it. He's just my favorite food, spaghetti. Like he's just going for it. So when he has to lie, his lies suck.
Yeah, he tries to be very straightforward, because I mean he doesn't really see the need to lie about many things, and then he gets this big reason to lie, and now he's trying to figure out, well, what is the right thing to do. And that's why he was so good with the public, is he could get on everyone's level, everybody could associate with what he was saying. And that's why a lot of people got super upset when he was like, no, I'm not doing anything to my body, because even if he has this disease, there's clearly something that he did
Yeah.
do, right?
And because he lied, it set the precedent. Like literally, in like the 80s or the 90s, you could still look up newspaper articles where like someone started a rumor that he was a vampire, and he had like a cryo booth in his mansion that kept him young. I'm not
True.
kidding.
That's not a. That's not, you got it. I thought you were listing rumors. That's true. It's
What
true.
exactly? You see, it's very, very, and it's because, dude, the press paparazzi is cancer, bro. It's cancer because the second they can leech onto something, they're gonna bleed you. They're gonna bleed you for every bit, and that's what they did. They forced him to come out and speak, and they did that by planting all these seeds. Oh, he's a vampire. Oh, he killed someone. He sacrificed someone. That's how he's so famous. He sold his soul. He's ashamed
He
of being
is
black.
bad.
Yeah, he's bad. Like, dude, they bullied this dude, and that's not even the worst part, right? You bullied him his whole adult life, when his whole adult life was dedicated to trying to be a child because he didn't get the childhood, as it were. This man has never known peace, and he's chasing it, desperately chasing it. And even after death, we cannot stop assassinating this man's character because the press is so vicious. We dig into every lie, and that pollutes every single potential for truth, because that's how we
So
operate.
he doesn't come out and straightforward even say that he has vitiligo until 1992, which is almost 10 years after he starts this whole thing. I mean, literally 10 years in, he's like, okay, fine, you've got me. I have a rare disease, which it's hard to say whether he should have led with that or not, because then people are going to think he's diseased, or because it's not like people understand it. Oh, he has vitiligo, and people are like, oh, well, that's not contagious, or oh, well, that's fine. And so, it's hard to say what he should have done, but he tells Oprah on live TV that he has vitiligo, and they make a public event out of him being open about that. And you could say that that's good, you could say that that's bad. It doesn't really matter, but they also tie into that interview that he was emotionally abused as a child, and I mean we've already made that fairly clear.
Yes.
And so all this happens in 1992. Again, it's right after he gets his Guinness World Record in 1990, and so he's back on the high note, and so he's finally made it back up to the top, and then this is where things start to get bad again.
Did you say bad?
Yeah, because he's bad.
He's bad. So
Um,
there's a
yeah,
trillion. There's I want to talk because we're already past our time, but there's two main points I want to press on. Michael Jackson.
okay, well, go for it.
Michael Jackson's
for
a paranoid person, and
Yes.
paranoia and hypochondria go hand in hand. They are bread and butter, but they are always on the same plate.
He grew up forced into both of those, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So I've been told very recently that sometime in the early 2000s, he did a Pepsi commercial. Michael Jackson's hair requires a lot of product to be perfect, because everything has to be perfect. Well, he wanted pyrotechnics in this Pepsi commercial, and one of them wasn't wired properly. The timing on it, or the timing code on it, wasn't properly placed. So he was supposed to be like 2 or 3 steps into his dance ahead of where he was in his dance before the fire goes poof and everything goes cool, and you're like, oh man, I really want a Pepsi. Yes, I love media propaganda. Yes, let me go get a Pepsi.
So this is back in 1984. I looked it up to be sure. Yeah, this is right after he's topped the charts with Thriller.
I was recently lied to. I thought it was earlier, but I wasn't gonna press because in 2004 he's like
Yeah,
off the
I knew it was
grid.
whenever he was getting questioned about the whole what's wrong with his skin thing, he was
Yeah.
already a little bit self-conscious about it, and then his hair came.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Well, John was taking accountability in the chat. I appreciate you taking accountability for your sins, sir. So this fire goes off and it destroys his scalp. He I think he gets like second, third degree burns on his scalp. It ruins his scalp, man. And he goes to the hospital, gets a couple of surgeries, gets a couple of grafts, gets assigned a few painkillers, and now he never lives down that he was injured on top of his head. So this is where allegedly drug abuse comes into play. Now he's addicted to painkillers because Big Pharma, if they can give you if they know you're good for the good stuff and can afford the good stuff, they're gonna give you the good stuff. But the good stuff is not easy to get off of. So this is where the alleged.
Well, yeah, and also you got to consider it's not just his body that's in pain. This medication is likely also easing the nervousness with his ego.
Yeah.
And after being publicly defaced in such a way, his hair catching on fire and all that, he probably feels like his ego has taken a big hit, just like his head, and so therefore he's trying to kind of manage both at the same time.
Yeah, but now he's also allergic to the sun.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if you remember that
that's
one.
That's not because of the Pepsi thing. That's not because he's. That's not because of the fire at all. It's because he's a vampire. I read the news.
Man, I'm telling you. So like he kept lying to the public, and it destroyed him, bro. So he doesn't want to be in the sun because he's scared for his scalp. I'm allergic to the sun. Man, it sucks, right?
Answer the big question. Answer the big question.
Ask me the big question in the chat so I can ask the people watching this at home the big question. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get it when you get it. You weren't here during the live stream.
Get what you get. Don't throw a fit.
But I mean, I'm saying, man, like this, we could talk about this all day, but this really sucks because the man's dead, right? So like, whether all these things are truths or lies or something in between.
So he wants to know, Tim. He wants to know, do you believe the allegations? He said that. Do you believe the allegations?
So while we build up to the climax of the podcast before the show's over, take everything we've said into account. Think about everything we've said about how he grew up, how he deals with the press, all these small factors, right?
Yeah, take into account how he dealt with his family and how things were held in his household is also another important detail.
So something you should also know before we even get into that is, while we're talking about all this, Michael Jackson has been married. He's been divorced. He's dated. He's been left.
Several times. Several times.
His dirty laundry has been aired out. People think he's asexual. People think he might be gay. There's a lot of rumors spread because of him being a quirky person. He has children. He made mistakes with his children because he just wants to play, or he just wants the children to have fun. He's putting them under like cloaks and blankets and veils because he doesn't want the media to see them. He's it looks like he's freaking out. Like it looks like he's totally wigging.
And it's another thing where a lot of people didn't know what he named his children and things like that because he wouldn't say because he didn't want them to get that same image that he got.
Yeah.
And again, he was a really bad liar, so it was just a real bad show.
And in hindsight, he did really good. Like, I mean, obviously people found out who his children were, but you're not going to see the near amount. Like, it's comparing like...
If I showed you a picture of some of his children, you probably wouldn't recognize
Exactly.
them.
Like,
and that's because they weren't child stars. They were wealthy children that had a good life.
Yeah. Hold on, what was John saying? There should be a part 2 because there's some information I want to share with you, specifically a few interviews with Corey Feldman. Jesus, we could do Corey Feldman next time as well. No, do you want to do a part 2? In part 2, we can be more about the allegations.
Sure. I mean, yeah. We're already 15 minutes or 16 minutes over. So, I mean, we could do just an hour on just what we think about the allegations because we didn't even get to MC.
Yeah, so we can do that's fine. We can get spicy with it. It's okay. One time spiciness is all right. We just got to keep the Dahlias real. So yeah, we'll do this. We'll do this again. Let me see. What next week? Next week isn't the last week of the month, right?
I don't expect so.
It is.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, you're right. Wait.
no, it's
Was
not.
it
We have
May
another one.
Day?
Okay, on the 21st, on the
Uh,
21st next Monday,
wait,
we're
it was
gonna do
just
part two.
Valentine's Day.
What?
It was just Valentine's Day, MJV Day.
Yeah. So
So there's no way it's the end of the month. That's the middle day. That's the day that's the middle of the. We're one day past the middle.
so on the 21st, we're gonna wrap up
It's
this story.
exactly 4 weeks in February.
Okay, on the 21st, we're gonna wrap up the Michael Jackson story, and on the 28th, we'll do our apocalypse episode. But we'll get there when we get there. Corey Feldman is freaking like that dude. First of all, his music sucks. He's a great actor. He's a phenomenal actor. He is a trash fire as a musician, though.
Aren't we all?
That's true. Okay, so this feels good. I'm glad because I was kind of worried we weren't gonna get to tell the whole story. So I'm glad. You know what, John? You're the MVP, bro. I'm glad you convinced us to make this a two-parter. So next time we'll press into this a little bit deeper and see what you guys think. But for now, I'm glad you guys are here with us.
I I I feel spoiled for choice this
Yeah.
time. I want to go ahead and say it because people are contributing to what they want us to do, and that makes me feel like
Yeah,
I'm doing something
you know what?
worthwhile.
This is the episode. You know, I won't even say it. You guys spoiled us for choice, and I appreciate that. So Dale, yeah, and
Dale, yeah, brother. Dale, yeah.
like always, I've been one of your hosts, Tim Hopkins.
And
That's
like always, I'm going to be a complete butthole about the other half of this.
he's the other guy. He's the guy on the other side of the
But
screen.
but I still very honored just to be here.
It's been great having you. So yeah.
And a pleasure, Dale.
Oh, dude, yeah, John, we got to come see you next time Noah's over here for sure. That's a fact. But
Oh yeah.
that has nothing to do with the
Dale,
content.
Dale, yeah.
So until next time, see you guys later.